Hello, people of God in our Wausau parishes, and welcome to this week's Quick Things. Most importantly, it is a conversation, an important one, really addressing two significant events that are coming up within the next few days and the next few weeks. First of all, we'll talk a little bit about the installation of Bishop Gerard Battersby, our new bishop, who will be installed on Monday, May 20th. We'll talk a little bit with Chris Karstens, our director of sacred worship for the diocese, about the installation rituals. And we'll also then talk about the Eucharistic procession coming up for our parishes on June 2nd. In addition to the significant information in the conversation, there's a Q&A about the procession in the Quick Things email as well. Just a few announcements before we get to that. A reminder to Eastside, members of the Eastside parishes, we are doing kind of a pop-up, quick collection to respond to some need that has been identified by the Good Shepherd Shelter as they expand their daytime programming and continue their services every night, all year round. There's a list of items that they've identified that are in need. It's in the Quick Things email. Those can be dropped off at either of the churches in the gathering space during the week. We'll just create a pile of stuff and then haul it over to the Good Shepherd Shelter. Or of course, and maybe most conveniently, those items, whatever you're able to contribute, can be brought along to Mass on Sunday. One correction before I get to the final announcement. In the conversation with Chris Karstens, I suggest, or I state, that the last bishop to be ordained in our church, in our cathedral, the last bishop to be ordained in our cathedral was Bishop Paul in the early 1980s. Actually, it was 1977 that Bishop John Paul was ordained a bishop. He was a priest of our diocese and then was named auxiliary bishop. He was when he was ordained in 1977 and eventually became our bishop. He was the bishop when I entered the seminary, and I got to know Bishop Paul very well when I was the associate pastor at Cathedral Parish, and he would often come for dinner with Father Cook, the pastor, and myself. A great man. So I wanted to correct that error in the conversation of the Quick Things. The final announcement for St. Anne parishioners, we're off to, as I mentioned at Masses this past weekend, we're off to a great beginning with our portrait taking for the parish directory. But there's still, like a third of the parishioners who have had pictures taken or have made appointments to have their pictures taken. And the directory is only valuable, it's really only complete, unless we're all in it. And I know there are some folks who are they've just determined they're not going to be. I'm not sure how we come to that determination. It's a pretty easy thing. It is a sacrifice, I guess, for some, but it's a pretty minimal sacrifice for most of us. We've had folks who've shown up to have their portraits taken with walkers and wheelchairs, and folks, families getting all the kids together and dressed up and things like that. Those are the real challenges or sacrifices that some have made because they just realize it's important for the parish and they don't want it to happen without them. So if you've been resistant or kind of dragging your feet, new days have been added in early June. You can find the link in the Quick Things email, the information you need to access the website to sign up, or you can call the parish office. We're taking pictures this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and there's still a few open spots as well. If you don't find anything that works for you and you want to get it done this week, just call the parish office and we will find a time to squeeze you in this week. Otherwise, there are those 3 days in June, and hopefully those will fill up and we'll add a few more days, maybe a bit later in June. Also, just be attentive to others who can't maybe get here themselves, and you could offer a ride for them, encourage them to come and have their portrait taken. We will be taking pictures of homebound parishioners, but there's a fee that we have to pay for each photo we submit that's not taken by the directory company. So we're going to do it, but there's a financial benefit if we can bring people in and take pictures here. So enough of the announcements. Let's get on with the conversation. Oh, one more thing. Sunday is Pentecost. Let's wear red, the color of the Holy Spirit. I'm happy to welcome to our Quick Things this week, Chris Karstens, who is the director of sacred liturgy or sacred worship, right, Chris?
I think sacred
Sacred
worship. Yeah.
worship for the Diocese of La Crosse. We're here to talk about a couple things, which one is our Eucharistic procession coming up on June 2nd, but something that is more imminent as well in our diocese. Chris, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What's your story?
Oh, yeah. Well, I live in Soldiers Grove, Wisconsin, which is about an hour south of La Crosse. And I came here after I met my wife, Marguerite. She's from Wisconsin. I'm from Nebraska. And I had a philosophy degree and needed a job, and the diocese needed somebody to work in the liturgy office, and so that's how we got together 25 years ago under then Bishop Burke. And so I worked in the diocese ever since then in that office.
In that large building in La Crosse, the
That's
diocesan center, you've been there the longest, I think, haven't you?
I think
Maybe,
at this
maybe Mary Jo Wilson.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think I'm the maybe the longest serving director. There's a few in the building who like Mary Jo and Kathy
Yeah,
Haverland and a few others
yeah,
who've
yeah.
been there longer than me. But yeah,
Yeah. Well, and so thank you for the service in that role. You've been a resource for certainly for our parishes. Resurrection dedicated a new altar several years ago during the time of Bishop Listecki. I'm sure you were involved in that. And then our dedication, the
yeah.
dedication of the altar here at St.
Mm,
Anne's, and
hmm.
other things that we probably don't even know about that
Yeah.
where you've
It's
the
a great
light.
job to have. So
Good,
I'm
good.
very
Well,
grateful to be able to serve
yeah,
in it.
I mean, certainly, I mean, worship is such a, I mean, it is part of it. What would Catholicism be without the worship, our celebration of Eucharist and things like the procession that we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
So Bishop Battersby is going to be joining us be installed on May 20th,
Yes.
but we anticipate that. Are things in play, Chris? Are things on track? Don't ask.
Oh, Father Tom. Yes, they are actually. And there's just a number of generous and competent and hardworking people who are. I think we're all working very hard and a little bit stressed and anxious about it. But I think things are in a very good spot all the way around, from the liturgies to the receptions to
Good.
the printing of books and things like that. But we're in the
Yeah,
thick of
there's
it
just so
now.
many pieces to it.
Yeah.
Liturgically, this is not as dramatic as the ordination of a bishop, which I don't think we have done in our cathedral since Bishop Paul was ordained back in the 80s, huh?
Yeah, I think you're
Um,
right.
but there are some significant liturgical elements to the welcoming of a new bishop, beginning with evening prayer on Sunday night.
Right.
What happens as that begins, Chris?
Yeah, well, there's a ceremony of welcoming the bishop, and this it's not really spelled out in a lot of detail, so it can take some different shapes a little bit. And so I've been a part of Archbishop Listecki's installation and then Bishop Callahan's, and I think what you can expect if you come, and hopefully folks can to the evening prayer. So Bishop Battersby waits at the door of the cathedral. And Bishop Callahan will preside at evening prayer, and he and Monsignor Gillis, who's the cathedral rector, they'll process from the sacristy through the nave of the church all the way to the back where Bishop Battersby will be waiting. And at this point, he's just welcomed and he's given a crucifix to kiss.
Doesn't he knock on the door, Chris?
This is one of those things that can kind of go either way. Archbishop Listecki did not. Bishop Callahan did. So yeah, we've been kicking that around a little bit and asking some
Oh,
people
shoot.
and
I would love that idea that he knocks on the door. Will you let me in?
yeah, who's there?
Yeah,
So
right.
yeah, yeah, it's not real detailed about that, but in any case, he's greeted, and then there's a little procession that goes to the Blessed Sacrament Chapel for a little bit of time in prayer, and then they'll eventually get into the sanctuary and they'll say evening prayer for Pentecost. It's a beautiful, beautiful
Right.
couple of days that they chose. So Sunday's Pentecost, so they'll do evening prayer for that, and then what's the title? Holy Mary.
Feast of Mary Mother of the Church. Right.
Yes, yes, the next day, and
Yeah.
that's the mass texts and orations that he chose
Right.
to use.
Right. An excellent day to celebrate that installation.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are welcome. They participate in evening prayer with the music and chants and things that are part of that. So, and that is open to anyone, right? Evening prayer is.
Yes, yes,
The installation mass on Monday is ticketed. I saw.
it is. It is. It's unfortunate, but it's just I mean, you served at the cathedral for some years, and every church has its spatial limitations.
Right,
It's
right.
only because of that. So
Right. It will be, and it will be more available than any installation. You mentioned Bishop Listecki, Bishop Callahan. It will be available for us more than any of those in terms of live stream.
mhm.
I think it's going to be aired on some TV stations as
It
well.
is. It is
Um,
WXOW, and yeah, even Father Tom, I was going back and watching. In fact, I have them right here. DVDs and CDs of the last one. Said uh, the time really goes, doesn't it? It's just kind of grainy in the
right.
technology and the fashions, even from 14 years ago. So
Right,
we move
right.
along.
Well, actually, Chris, I have a track record. I was not at Bishop Callahan's installation because I was on vacation. And I'm
Okay.
not going to be at Bishop Battersby's installation because I will be on vacation, previously scheduled as well. Father Bill, I was telling Father Bill Grivach this, and he said, "Yes, that's your track record. You just skip things."
Oh, good for him and good for you. Yeah, you'll be able to watch it though,
I
wherever you
will,
may
I
be.
will, I will. And we will include links to all that for folks who are watching. We'll include links to that in our emails and it'll be on websites and Facebook pages and stuff as well. The installation is the liturgical part of the installation is pretty brief, right?
It is. It is. In some ways, I think the installation is more canonical almost than liturgical, and so there's the apostolic letter, the document from the Holy See, and the College of Consultors reviews this and approves it to see that it's all legitimate. And I think maybe they have to sign something. I don't know. Maybe you've been on the. I guess if you're skipping these installations, Father Tom,
I've
you
never
probably
been a
haven't been on.
consultor.
Okay. So that's sort of the canonical manner by which the bishop takes possession, liturgically or ritually, right at the beginning of the Mass of Installation. And it's presided over by the Metropolitan Archbishop. So that's our Archbishop Listecki. So he sort of presides at the entrance rites, and he'll invite Bishop Callahan to welcome the people and I guess give his few last words before introducing the nuncio, Cardinal Pierre, who will step forward and he will actually read the letter from Pope Francis.
So the papal nuncio being the papal representative to the United States,
Mm-hmm.
who is the one who actually called Bishop Battersby and told him the Holy
Yes,
Father would like you to be going, like you to go
yes,
abroad,
yes.
right?
That's the one. That's the
Yeah.
one. And after that, then it's the letter shown to the College of Consultors so they can see it's legitimate.
And
And
to
then
the
there's
people, right?
what's that?
And to the people also, isn't it? Or
Sort
no?
of. I mean,
Okay.
the a deacon, the cardinal hands it to the deacon who will carry to the consultors. There's not really a large, so he's not
Right.
going to go up and down the aisle or
Oh,
anything
no.
like that, but the parchment, or I don't know what kind of paper they use these days for these. But after that, then Bishop Callahan and Cardinal Pierre will escort Bishop Battersby over to the cathedra. And at that point, Archbishop Listecki steps aside, and there's a few prayers that accompany the actual seating or installation. And then, followed by that, then Bishop Battersby is greeted by just a handful. Well, it's actually, the list is kind of getting long, a representative sample of the faithful from the diocese, which includes Catholic schools and focus missionaries and religious and priests and deacons and Catholic charities and just a great number of people who welcome him. And then after that, it's kind of mass as usual insofar as mass is ever usual, especially when you have bishops and cardinals and a church full of people. But yeah, after that, the
Right.
ritual is pretty similar.
Right. So cool. Well, again, it will be available. We won't be able to go, but we can participate online. That's where those who are kind of purists about worship and disparage live streaming of mass, here's one of those occasions where it really makes it accessible for so many people who can't otherwise be there, even if we're
Right.
able physically.
Mhm.
The doors will be locked to many of us, so
Yeah.
we will
Yeah.
be there via live stream.
Mm.
So, have you met Bishop Battersby?
I had a 30-minute meeting when he
Oh,
was first on site just to review a couple of the details and his preferences for these installation liturgies, but that's the extent so far.
any preferences you can share with us?
He told us in the meeting to choose the ordinary, and he was very humble, and he had a few requests, but he he was generally
Can you
make the
imagine?
best choices,
Yeah.
and I'll be
Can you
pleased.
imagine what this is like for him coming into a completely strange place where you don't know anyone?
Uh,
My head just spins at the thought of it.
Oh yeah, yeah, likewise. And then, we're all upper Midwest people, but city of Detroit's not exactly La Crosse and Southwest Wisconsin. So
Yeah.
anyway, but
Yeah. Well, so we will all be engaged somehow, hopefully, when those events unfold on May 19th and 20th. So,
yes,
and thank you for your work on
thank you.
those in advance.
Sure.
So I am with Chris Carsons. He's the director of sacred worship for the Diocese of La Crosse. And I asked Chris to join me also today to talk about Corpus Christi processions or Eucharistic processions. So we will be having such a procession on June 2nd, which is the Solemnity of the Body and Blood of Christ, commonly known as Corpus Christi. And so I thought as an introduction to that, Chris could maybe offer some background as to what these are all about. I mean, to be honest, Chris, I have never participated in one. I've never
Mhm.
seen one other than like in the Godfather movie or something like that, or online.
Uh-huh.
Um, so where does this come from? This
Hmm.
idea of, well, first of all, explain to us what a Eucharistic procession is.
Okay. All right. Well, let's take kind of this in two parts. Well, first of all, processions and pilgrimages, they're sort of kind of in miniature what our life's journey is about, right? Because we're all on this pilgrimage or this procession from the font to heaven. And this is this long journey. And so what procession is, whether it's a small one, like a communion procession or a procession in mass or think all the processions that we have in the Triduum, with the Paschal candle or after on the Mass of the Lord's Supper. These are all sort of like miniature sort of sacramental expressions of, hey, we're all passing over. We're all on this journey. So that's the one thing, is that processions generally are a very Catholic thing because we're a sacramental people and we express this sort of this Passover movement by a procession. Now, accompanied by that, this is kind of a unique type of procession insofar as we travel with the Blessed Sacrament. And Eucharistic, sort of extra liturgical Eucharistic devotions really started to gain a lot of steam in the like 1100s, 1200s, and for a variety of reasons. The church was busy ironing out like the Trinity questions during the first 1,000 years, and once we had all of those solved, Father Tom, they moved on to more sacramental ones. So, but there was a focus then, 1200s, on the Eucharist and the sacraments. And one of those expressions was the Solemnity of Corpus Christi, which sort of began, I think her name is Saint Julianne of Liege,
Yeah.
and she had some visions of Jesus um, desiring this, and the future pope was from Liege, and so he was familiar
Ah.
with her in these visions. So when he became pope, and once you get to become pope, Father Tom, there's all sorts of things that you're able to do.
Well, as
It's
we've seen with Saint Faustina and the Divine Mercy devotion,
mhm.
Pope John Paul II was from Poland, and so he was familiar with that.
Yeah, yeah, very good. True, true. So when he became pope, he established this in the 1260s or something like this as a universal feast, and St. Thomas Aquinas wrote a number of these things so that we would process along with the Blessed Sacrament. And so that's kind of the initial things, but there are sort of processions. I've been thinking about it's really kind of the procession of the chosen people through the desert, accompanied by this the manna from heaven. And so I think it's fair that we could think of ourselves in this same way. He gave them meat in the evenings and bread in the morning, and so
Yeah.
we're kind of processing into the promised land with sort of flesh under the form of bread, like the chosen people did. After the Mass of the Lord's Supper, that's kind of a Corpus Christi procession. So that's what it's about. It's an occasion to profess our faith in the sacrament, to thank Jesus for being present with us in this way, and to sort of live this procession to heaven, nourished by the Eucharist.
Mhm. So how common is the idea of Eucharistic processions today? I mean, is this something most parishes do? Or I mean,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I would say more and more are, for a variety of reasons. I think following the council, there was an emphasis to make the liturgy the center. And, whether this is real or fake or a caricature, 100 years ago, people go to mass. It was easier to pray devotional prayers rather to engage in the mass. Well, the council fathers in the church wanted people to participate in the mass, and this is a good thing. Sort of an unintended consequence of that was that kind of a downplaying of extra liturgical devotional life. But there seems to be coming back into a balance. So I think right after the council, there weren't a lot of Eucharistic processions. At least I've been to a few, Father Tom, but I didn't go to my first Eucharistic procession until I got this job in the Diocese of La Crosse. We never did this when I was growing up. And so there were some, but more parishes have these more and more each year. And I suppose too, because we're in the midst of this Eucharistic revival, I guess it is, that, these are being promoted. Now, again, not to the exclusion of engaging the Eucharist in the Mass, but as a complement and as a supplement to that.
And so maybe talk to that, Chris. One of the things that's stipulated is that devotion must always emanate from the celebration of Mass. So whether it's adoration of the Blessed Sacrament in church or a procession such as this, the documents that guide us in this are clear that this must emanate from the Mass. Why is that important?
Yeah.
Well, just say, as explanation, just for your information too, is that our procession will begin with the 10:30 Mass at St. Michael. And so we're encouraging everyone, whether parishioners at Resurrection or St. Anne or St. Michael, to join us for that 10:30 Mass at St. Michael. Even if you can't participate in the procession, you'll be part of the experience by being present with us for that celebration of Mass. And then the procession will leave from St. Michael's and proceed. But why is it important that we begin with Mass, or that this emanate from Mass?
Well, because the altar is the source of all of this. And if, I don't know, you mentioned before, what would Catholics be without their worship? What would Eucharistic devotions be without the altar? And if there were no altar, if there were no celebration of the Mass, then there isn't anything after that and beyond that. So everything starts on the altar. And in fact, the norms say that the host should be consecrated at that Mass. The host that you're going to use in the procession comes from the Mass that immediately precedes it, if at all possible, right? Where the priest, as the head of the assembly, and the people all sort of make their contributions and join to Jesus in participating in the sacrifice, and his presence becomes among us. And so that's really the heartbeat and the origin. And what we do outside and after that is an extension of that. So Pope Benedict would say that the Eucharistic celebration is the Church's supremest act of adoration and of worship. So it all begins at that point. And so, yeah, there's there's different ways. I think, Father Tom, and maybe you can, I don't know what you think about this. When it was announced that we we're going to have this Eucharistic revival, I think many people, intelligent, well-informed, smart people said, oh, this means Eucharistic devotions and adoration and procession. And it does mean that, but again, it's because oftentimes when we think of the Eucharist, it's those things that we think of. And those extra liturgical things are meant, again, to supplement and to complement and to build up, this heart which is the Mass. So,
well, I certainly understand what you're saying. I will, since you brought up the Eucharistic revival, it does seem to focus a lot on the real presence and the adoration aspect. The image is almost, I seem to show monstrances and things.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, Timothy O'Malley, the Notre Dame professor, I heard him speak a few weeks ago. I was on retreat just for a few days of retreat at St. John's Abbey, and he was speaking. And that was one of his observations as well, that we've kind of maybe gotten a little too far into the adoration piece of the revival. But one thing he said, Chris, and I'll watch now to get your reaction to this. He said if he could select a patroness of the Eucharistic revival, he would choose Dorothy Day, servant of God, Dorothy Day.
Okay.
Which I think so too, and he talked about how she would be at Mass in one room of the Catholic Worker House, and she would leave Eucharist and go and serve food to the people who were passing through.
I think she's an excellent model and patroness. You know, she just like we've been talking. What would Dorothy Day be? She'd be the first to say this. Who would Dorothy Day be without the Eucharist?
Oh my gosh.
You know, I
Right.
don't know a lot of Dorothy Day quotes, but I've heard this one is, you know, people say, you know, you should go to mass and go to church and find some peace and calm. Says, I feel excited, you know, I'm just energized to, you know, to go out and, you know, this third year, the Eucharistic revival is called this year of mission, this year of going out. And so I think, yeah, she'd be a great model.
And we have a group in our parishes that are reading her autobiography as
Mm.
kind of a Eucharistic revival piece as well over the next couple of months. So to coincide with this. Well, our
Mhm.
procession, Chris. So this last year, Solemnity of the Body and Blood of Christ, I was preaching at Eastside parishes, St. Michael and Resurrection. And it occurred to me at that same time, Catholic Charities had just moved to a new facility here in Wausau that's just an amazing
Mhm.
community. It's called the Community Partners Campus, and different organizations that serve those who are in need of various needs are located there. And since then, and with that move, they expanded to year-round being open to the homeless. And so it occurred to me, you know, to kind of call attention to that Community Partners Campus and the Good Shepherd Shelter, that we could do a procession from our church to the Good Shepherd Shelter. Now I'm saying this on the feast day because someone had emailed me a couple weeks in advance, and you know there was no time to put something together last year. But so this year, we're going to process from St. Michael's to the Good Shepherd Shelter.
Mhm.
We'll have benediction there outdoors, and then we will take the Blessed Sacrament back to St. Michael's in a more subdued manner. But it's that idea of connecting the altar, the Eucharist, the procession, as you're saying, our journey through life with our ministry, our outreach, how we respond to the gospel. So that's kind of the big where this is all going, or what we're planning.
Yeah. Well, that's just the big picture. I think we can get a little myopic in so many aspects of life, but even in our, you know, the Eucharist is the center. Well, it's about adoration. Well, it is, but it's more than that. Or it's about adoration in the Mass. And it is, but it's even more than that. It's supposed to be a life-changing, world-changing type of event. And so to see the big picture is something we
Talk
should.
about why is it so one thing that some people have already said to me is I just don't like the idea of us carrying. So can you first of all, I was going to use the word monstrance. Can you
Mhm.
explain what a monstrance is?
Yeah.
Other
So,
than a horrible word, I think it's the most scary word.
you know, I think it's related to monster,
I think it
actually.
is.
Yeah, which means like to show or, you know, a real, you know, a sight or a vision. And so, yeah, so a monstrance is, I don't know, they're anywhere from 2 to 3 feet tall. And in the center is where the host is placed.
The
And then
Luna.
it's sort of, yeah, the Luna is placed in the monstrance. And then it's supposed to be decorative. It's like a display. In some ways, maybe, Father Tom, it's like, imagine the priest's hands holding the host at Mass. It's sort of a snapshot of that. So where people can see and this display. So that's what a monstrance is.
Yeah.
And it's you know, it's a beautiful, reverent, devotional way that we can accompany Jesus through the streets of our town as we make our journey to the promised land.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I don't know, it's a devotional expression, it's a sign of love, it's a sign of joy when the documents speak about it. It's supposed to be a great occasion of joy for us. You know, that
Well,
this
and I think there is something to be said for this public display. I mean, we often, I think, as Catholics, we have kind of stayed within our walls in terms
Mhm.
of professing faith, showing it, you know. And
Yeah.
this is a rather public way, not pushing it on people, but making others maybe aware of.
Yeah, and I guess I would invite people who are part of your procession or any procession. I just a few memories that I have when we would on occasion we would go from the cathedral to Blessed Sacrament Parish, which is the only parish in the diocese named Blessed Sacrament. We'd go down King Street, which is appropriately named too. And I don't know if you remember that place, Father Tom, called Pizza Doctors. I don't think it's
Yeah.
there anymore. Okay. I remember processing down there and people look out the window and you'd see a table of people kneel down.
Oh
You get a
my.
farther down King
Wow.
Street and some fella's out there mowing the lawn without his shirt on or something. And here comes this strange group of people carrying this. Oh, this is a procession. They'd stop kneel. People had no idea you were coming by. So it really is, you'll probably see some beautiful things actually.
Well, we just a couple weeks ago we prayed the Stations of the Resurrection, the Way of Light,
Yep.
at Marathon Park, which I had never. That was something new to me as well. But
Mhm.
as we made our way around the park, a woman stopped and asked one of the group what we were doing, and she said, "Could I join you?"
Mm,
And she did. Just she was kind of intrigued by what this
beautiful.
was about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what and that what you probably would encourage that parishes that do this don't contact the police and just do it haphazardly, right?
This could be one of the most
Just to
difficult
make it
parts.
more exciting.
Yeah, well, we always had to contact them to get across West Avenue, and sometimes it's yeah, that could be a hard part because if you stick on the sidewalk, then you're all strung out almost in a single file line. It's hard to pray and sing together. If you can move as kind of a glob or an organized
I
group
know.
of people, it's much easier to pray. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah, we will be stuck to the sidewalk, but I'm hoping, you can walk in a group on a sidewalk too.
mhm,
I'm hoping that we certainly won't be single file or
mhm.
whatever, that will kind of be a more unified group. But we have contacted the police.
Yeah.
They'll help us cross a couple streets that would be a little dicey
Hmm.
otherwise.
Hmm.
And then what our plan is, especially for people who are watching this, we will leave St. Michael's, we will cross Sixth Street, make our way north on Sixth to the in the center of Wausau, Chris. There's something called the 400 block, and we'll kind of regroup. We'll regroup at a couple spots, maybe at intersections or whatever. But then we'll go to the 400 block, and there we'll have some brief prayer or scripture reading of some kind, and then make our way from there to the
Hmm.
Community Partners
Hmm.
campus for
Hmm.
benediction.
Yeah. If
So
I
preaching
can I
and
make
scripture there as well.
good. If I can make another little plug, if your folks do your procession and they just can't get enough, so the Eucharistic pilgrimage that comes through La Crosse, that'll be on Friday morning, and is it? I think it's Pettibone Park on the other
Right,
side of the Cass Street Bridge. So Bishop, what's his
Barron.
name? Oh yes, Bishop
Barron.
Barron. Yes,
Oh,
Bishop Barron.
wow, you forgot Bishop Barron's name, Chris.
So this
That's
Bishop
almost
Barron
hard to do,
fellow
right?
will will begin the procession from the west side of the Cass Street Bridge, and he'll carry the monstrance over the bridge and hand it to Bishop Battersby, and then we'll process into the La Crosse Center for a day's worth of events. But yeah, it'll be very similar to what you're doing there
But
in
isn't
Wausau.
that also then continuing up into through the diocese, Chris, like to Wausau, I
It
think? We
is,
haven't
it
heard
is. So
anything
then for the
about it
next,
here.
it must be the next 5 days. There's just various
Oh,
stops along the way from La Crosse,
right.
it'll end up in Sparta, I think, Marshfield and Rapids, and eventually through Wausau and into
I
Green
think
Bay.
so. Yeah. I did something similar to this, not a Eucharistic procession, but on Holy Thursday, when I was pastor of St. Stanislaus Kostka in Stevens Point and Newman Parish, there was only a block that separated
Yeah.
the church from the Newman Center. And so on Holy Thursday, we processed with the consecrated hosts
Mhm.
from St. Stan's to Newman, and that's where the altar of repose was through the night. And it was just, again, two things. Was it helped to bring those two parishes together in this procession, but
Mhm.
also there was a lot of college students. I mean, this was right through the campus, so a lot of curiosity as to what is going on here, but very respectful as well. And
Mhm.
I know they did something similar in La Crosse this year. I think Father Dodge from Newman to Blessed Sacrament, which you mentioned earlier, because he's
Yeah,
pastor of both of those parishes.
I think you're right.
So, is there anything else that you'd want to add, Chris, regarding processions or what we are embarking upon?
I don't think too much other than what we talked about is just to think of the Eucharist. It's, we can't open our eyes wide enough to kind of take it all in, but take in, these little pieces, but not get too narrow-sighted about it. It's a sign of joy, and go and be joyful about it, and
Right.
people will see it.
Yeah, we don't want to be too fussy in terms of orderly processions. Like, let's be a mob, let's stay together as the body of Christ, right? We don't want to be disorderly or anything, but
Hmm.
we'll chant along the way. And then also, I just for folks who can't make the walk, so it's about a mile that we'll be walking. We'll stop, as I said, at the 400 block where people can join us there for prayer. And if you're able to walk from there, you could, or just join us at the Good Shepherd Shelter at the end. It will be worth your while. We'll have prayer there, scripture, preaching, music, and the blessing with the monstrance. And then we'll have a reception as well, because we'll be hungry and thirsty at the end of that journey, right? So.
Good.
Chris, thank you very much for
Thank
talking
you,
with
Father.
me and for expanding our minds and understandings of the wonder of Eucharist and the Eucharistic procession. And we'll let you know how it goes. Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Good. Thanks for having me, Father.
Thank you, Chris. God bless.